Malik, I noticed that that is tougher talk from Mayorkas, but is this tough talk from Mayorkas a little too late?
Yeah, it is. I believe what we're witnessing with the Biden administration and what happens with the difference between rhetoric and governance. And I think it's much easier when you're not in office or when you don't have the responsibility, especially for something as wide as the border. I think it's much easier to say what you would and would not do. A number of the things that the Biden administration criticized the Trump administration for doing, including Title 42, is they're seeing now that it's a bit different once you actually get in office. Sure, I'm a Republican, but at the end of the day, the immigration issue is an intractable problem, and it's a problem that existed across administration. There are a number of things that the Biden administration, or at least it was expected the Biden administration to do because they were being pushed from the activist community on doing, handling the immigration. But we're seeing the crisis at the border, whether or not it's the drug cartels, whether or not it's the coyotes or the drug trafficking that's going across the border.
And Malik,
I've
heard many say that the closest we ever came to really having a bill or proposal that would work was when the Gang of Eight actually put something forward and it didn't go anywhere. Republicans in the House will vote on an immigration bill as early as today. Now, President Biden has said he would veto the bill if it got to his desk, and even some Republicans in agricultural districts say they may vote against it. Is this bill merely symbolic at this point?
Yeah, of course, especially coming out of the House, it is definitely something that is pretty much symbolic. But I think at the end of the day, what the Republicans are realizing is that they have to put forth something, much like the debt ceiling debate. A lot of the things in the debt ceiling debate, a lot of those things are symbolic. Whether or not they'll actually become law, we don't know. But the Biden administration has to do something, much like Republicans. They have to be able to say that at the end of the day, we did try to put a bill forward, even though Biden, as you said, is planning on rejecting it altogether. But symbolic, absolutely, it's politics.
And Malik, like you said earlier, each administration seems to have dealt with this or tried to deal with this situation at the border. Now, the White House says they have a plan and they're ready for the increase in migrants at the border. Are they, Malik?
No, of course they're not. And what we're looking at now, towards the end of Title 42, many of the experts and people involved in that community, they're saying that they're expecting those numbers to actually double what they are now. So, of course, they're not ready for it. The Biden administration did put about 15 National Guard troops at the border. That's something, but nothing that the Biden administration can do will be able to stop the flow of people coming from over the border, because we need a comprehensive plan that's not just about the border wall, that's not just about asylum. We need a comprehensive plan. And the politicians on both sides have pretty much shown us that they're not interested in that.
And our own border correspondent, Allie Bradley, has reported extensively on how border towns are struggling with the influx of migrants. Now, the administration is moving to a strategy of facing the problem head on in many of the Latin American countries where these migrants are actually coming from. Is this the right approach?
Well, I think on that point, it is a little too late. Earlier on, the administration, Biden tapped VP Harris as his border czar. And that was one of the things that she said. It was a pretty statement. Don't come. Well, sure, it's much easier to say than done. Many of these countries have been destabilized. And so they're coming here, some for asylum, some for just to seek better living conditions. There are a number of reasons why people come at the border, but I think they're realizing, at least under the Biden administration, that it will be an easier path for them to get to the United States and ultimately stay in the United States than it would have been under a Donald Trump. So on this point of just telling, working with Latin American countries, I think on that front, it really is just too little and much too late.
Malik, one more question before I let you go. How could immigration factor into the GOP primary and the 2024 race for the presidency?
Well, I think both sides are going to have to come up with a plan. Typically, what happens during these campaign seasons, they roll out big, bold plans. On the Republican side, they're going to have to do something more than just enforcement. They will have to deal with the people who are already here and making a pathway for them to eventually become a citizen. On the Democratic side, they can't just say, well, we have just come one, come all. They also have to realize that there's an enforcement requirement. And I think both sides are going to have to push back against their base in what they expect each of the parties to do.
And Malik, I agree with you. I think that both sides recognize we need immigrants in this country. This is a country built by immigrants. But at the same time, border security should not be an issue that becomes bipartisan.
Right. Absolutely.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation in your cable lineup. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-based, unbiased coverage.